very excited to not have to go work in the slaughterhouses and learn the business like the rest of my older cousins and my dad and my grandparents. We really lived that American dream. My great-grandfather came through Ellis Island, worked in a slaughterhouse, and worked his way up to own one of a very big meat company in the Midwest. So as Judy alluded to, my background is in national security, so a little bit different. And my story is completely tied to 9/11. I was in New York City at graduate school. It was my second day of graduate school. They were making me take a remedial math class because I had been out of school for many years. And I came outside my class to go make some copies, and someone said, "It's so weird, a little plane just accidentally hit the World Trade Center." And over the next few hours and days, when the smoke settled and the F-16s finished flying over New York City, I really knew that national service was what I was going to spend my time doing. That was what I was going to dedicate my career to. Within a year of that, I was recruited by the CIA to be a Middle East analyst. And then a year after that, I was trained and deployed to Iraq, working alongside the military. And I ended up serving 3 tours there for a total of about 2 years. And in between those 3 tours, I would be back serving at the White House under both Republican and Democratic administrations. I worked at the State Department, and then the last 5 years at the Pentagon. I left as an acting assistant secretary, and my portfolio was the Middle East, Russia, Europe, and the terrorist groups that emanate from those parts of the world. So it was a very busy and active time in the post-9/11 era. For me, to be honest with you, the thought about running for office, I just had never had it before November. It was not something that was on my bucket list, and I just felt that over the past year, it just struck myself and my husband that Congress and politicians in general had just forgotten that they are public servants. They forgot that they work for the people that they represent, and their one job is to improve the lives of their constituents. That's their one way to get graded. That's the one way. And it just felt over the past year with the vitriol and the intensity of the past year, I'll call it diplomatically, that people had forgotten what their job was. So I started investigating whether to run for Congress and what it would be about. And to be honest with you, my husband and I looked really hard at the money. It was Cody's question, and the money that you have to raise in order to compete with an incumbent in a gerrymandered Republican district was the thing that really was keeping us out of the race. Mike Bishop is the incumbent in this district. I think many of you know of him. Between what the money that he raised and the money that the Republican Party threw in last cycle, that was $2.5 million for one congressional seat. So that kind of astonished me. It's easy to see how money becomes an obsession when you are running for office, because if you don't raise those kind of dollars, it's hard to compete. So we were really hesitant to throw our hat in the ring and get our family involved in that. And then Mike Bishop sat in the Rose Garden, smiling behind Donald Trump after his healthcare vote in the Congress in May. And he did it without one real town hall, without one real virtual town hall, an online town hall, without sending out a survey. How would this affect you? What would this vote on healthcare do to you and your family? When he did that without engaging anyone, without truly letting himself hear from his constituents, I knew that he had failed at that one job. And I said, that's it. I'm getting in. So soon afterwards, we got in, and we have been going all over the district. I've been here a number of times, thanks to Judy and the Indivisible groups, and the couple of things that I've heard pretty clearly. Number one, people feel unhappy generally with what's happening in Washington and what's happening in the state, and they feel fundamentally unheard by their politicians. They feel unhappy with things like the economy. I am running as a Midwestern Democrat. I'm going to bring that term back. Please help me bring it back. A Midwestern Democrat is a pragmatic, practical, hardworking, no-nonsense, willing to work across the aisle if it helps people, serious, responsible, mission-focused Democrat. That's what I'm running as. That's what Michigan, the Michigan that I grew up in, was that kind of a place, right? The thing I always think about, you know, my dad was a Republican, my mom was a Democrat, but in Michigan, when I was growing up, you know, politics were not something that people were bitterly fighting about, right? We were more likely to fight about Michigan State versus Michigan than we were about politics, really. And I think about it now in this era, it just, and what I think I've heard over and over is that people are angry that Washington and the vitriol in Washington have made some of our Thanksgiving dinners uncomfortable. That within our own family, cousins are sniping at each other over politics. That's never how we were here. We are pragmatic, hardworking people. And we're just focused on the mission. I hear, as a Midwestern Democrat, we talk about the economy first, second, third, and fourth. It doesn't mean we don't talk about other issues, right? I reject this idea that if I talk about the economy all the time, I can't care about gay rights or women's issues. That's crap. You can actually care about the economic security of people in this state and in this district and care about all the social issues. That choice between what kind of Democrat I am, I reject that. I reject that it's an either or. So the economy and what is going on here in our district, we are going through generational level change. We are going through a change in our economy that will take years to fully play out, and we need to be better prepared. Abdul spoke about this in a number of instances in his talk. We need to figure out how to take the vacancies that we have in our businesses right now today. In our district, there are vacancies every quarter, especially in things like IT, and make sure that our kids are coming through an education system and post-secondary education that prepares them for that job. That is a solvable problem, but you need to do some strategic planning. You need to get the businesses together with the universities, the community colleges, and the high schools to figure out how to prepare for this change. It's something in the military. My husband's 30-year Army veteran, Apache pilot. We met on my third tour in Iraq. And I've been serving at the Pentagon for the past 5 years. We do strategic planning. The military sits down, they get everyone together, and they say, we need more pilots. You know, we need more F-16 pilots. We're not getting enough in the pipeline. How do we incentivize more pilots? How do we get more pilots trained? How do we change our program so that folks who are flying F-18s are retrained to fly F-16s? We can do that if all the stakeholders sit together and plan. And we haven't had leadership that's gotten us together to do that. People also feel unhappy, clearly, about healthcare and prescription drugs. Healthcare, obviously, has been in the news constantly. Prescription drugs, I give a lot of credit to the Michigan Dems in Lansing this week. If folks saw, they introduced a bill on prescription drug transparency. It was a very basic idea. If a drug company is going to increase the price of their product by more than 10% a year, they got to open their books and show us why they need to increase that price, right? If they're increasing their price because they've done all kinds of research and development, they've really put in money to figure out what that new drug is that's going to help people, okay, we all understand they're a business, they got to make up their costs. But if they're increasing their costs by 10 times the rate of inflation every year, which is what they're doing, they need to prove to us that it's about research and development and not commercials. Those godforsaken commercials on TV. So that, I applaud what the Michigan Dems did, and that is exactly the kind of thing I'd be pushing for if I were lucky enough to be elected as your representative. Now, the general idea that people feel unheard. This is, I think, played out in our election here in Michigan very, very clearly. People feel like Washington is just not hearing us. They're just not getting what is going on here. Those generational challenges with the economy, no one is talking about that. Donald Trump said a few words about it. He told people that he was going to bring manufacturing back. And there are a lot of people, certainly in Holly, there are a lot of people who just said, listen, I don't love the Twitter, I don't love the chaos, I don't love the guy, but he was the only one who was talking about jobs and my kind of job. So I put my bet on him. We as Democrats need to earn back the vote of that voter. We do it by talking about the economy, and we do it by having plans, having real concrete ideas, not just criticizing the other guy, right? I try not to talk about Donald Trump all that often because it's not about him. He can drive us crazy sometimes, but it's not about him, it's about what we're gonna do for people in this district. And I think the policy of just criticizing the other guy is not a good strategy. I also feel like, just to bring it back to Livingston County in particular, because Judy and others and Jim Swank have really helped me learn, Holly is in some ways like Livingston County in spirit, but it is in Oakland County. So I've been trying to learn as much as I can about Livingston County. And I keep coming back to the same idea, again, that a representative's job is to improve the lives, to improve the lives of their constituents, and at a bare minimum should be making sure that his citizens are secure and safe, right? So I started learning about the issues of Livingston County, and a couple of things just popped up as immediately interesting. Number one, we have no office for our representative here. We have the Brighton office, none in Ingham, but people don't have a great track record of getting access to Mike Bishop and his attention, his constituent services. So I don't know if there's anyone here who was associated with the Alzheimer's Association, but there was a group in Brighton who contacted me, and they said, listen, we're not really political. We've got members who are Republicans, Independents, Democrats, but we want to talk about how the healthcare legislation is going to affect our parents, our relatives who have Alzheimer's, and home care in particular. We went to Washington, and the only person who wouldn't see us in the delegation was Mike Bishop. We called his office, he won't call us back. We saw your name advertised, so we thought we'd call you. Basic constituent services so that people can feel heard is a bare minimum, and something where people have come out of the woodwork in this area in Livingston, but all across the district to come and talk to me. The other issue of safety and security that I've been learning about is the Rover pipeline. I don't know how much people know about it. Can I just get a show of hands of people who know the general issue? Okay, a lot of you, yeah. So I was at an event here in Brighton at the Mill Pond, an Indivisible group event, and we had some folks come and speak to us from I think, People Against the Rover Pipeline. We connected afterwards, and I said, let me hear what you have to say about that. To be honest with you, I thought it was an environmental issue. And when I got the briefing from that team, I will tell you, that is not a partisan issue, that's not a tree hugger issue. That is a pipeline that was moved without notification to the residents around Silver Lake to put them within 100 feet of this pipeline. There is a YMCA camp within 300 feet. That is what they call the kill zone. My breath was taken away when I got this briefing. If there was to be an accident on this pipeline, like this company had in Texas 2 years ago, every access route to that lake community would be cut off. Not only are they in the kill zone, but every road in for fire, police, anything would be cut off. When they asked that odorant be put in the gas, right, so that the gas that went 100 feet from their house, that you have to add that smell we're all smelling for whenever we think there's a natural gas leak, the company refused to put in an odorant, so they will have no early warning if there was a leak. And then, of course, it's not our district, but for gosh sakes, if this thing was to have an explosion, it would contaminate Ann Arbor's water with irradiated natural gas. This is shocking. That shocked me. And I will tell you, their ability to engage Congressman Bishop has been nil. So the group did the right thing. They went to our senators And our senators wrote a letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they're trying to do what they can. But if you, as an elected representative, can't use your office to help protect the safety of your citizens, you do not deserve to have that job. And I've been working as hard as I can with that community to get them media exposure. We have an investigative journalist who has now agreed to take on this issue, and then to work the connections I have back in Washington to try and get to this Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They just finally got new Trump appointees in the door. So there's someone to talk to. But I just wanted to make the point in Livingston County, because these are your neighbors, if not some of you here today. And this is what I mean when, like, we gotta have elected officials who work harder, who try harder. So, okay. That's a little bit about what I'm about. I look forward to talking with folks and learning more about the Livingston issues. I want to tell you that I think when you look at this district and how it's gerrymandered, there's a lot of people who will say, don't bother coming to Livingston County, right? You're not going to win here. And you're right, we may not win here, but I'm going to lose better if I'm going to be here. Like I said, Holly is not that different from a bunch of towns here in Livingston County, and people care if you come to their door. I have met people who have said, listen, I'm an independent or I'm a Republican, but she came to my house. That still matters in a place like this. So I just wanted to tell you very directly that I care about Livingston County, and I'm going to work my butt off here because it's just like the town where I'm from, and it does matter what happens here. It does contribute to us being able to flip the seat. So thank you very much again. I'm Elissa Slotkin. Sir.
You obviously are bright and had good jobs. You're honest. I'm a believer if you want to understand a person to some degree, you go back to their hometown. If I went back to Holly, wandered around on the streets or out in the farmland, say, you know so-and-so, what do you got to say about her? What would I hear?
Yeah, you should do it. So, I mean, Holly, I don't know if you've been there or been there lately. It's, we got a downtown and kind of a more of a shopping district. I would say our campaign's been pretty visible there. We filmed our intro video there. I know the people who run the businesses. I will say I walked into our very newest business in Holly because it was a really beautiful storefront. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll have an event there. And I walked in and this woman, before I even got a chance to say, would you ever host an event here? Would you ever let me use the venue? The woman behind the counter says, you look familiar. And I said, oh, have we met? And she said, what's your name? I said, Elissa Slotkin. She said, I'm Darlene Dominic's sister. so I had got to meet Darlene's family, who just opened up in Holly. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm not having an event in your lovely, lovely storefront. But we had a very nice conversation. So we've been engaged with the business owners. We use some of the cafes as like our satellite offices. We're there so much. My campaign manager lives right downtown across from the post office. We're there every day. My interns eat lunch there every day, and people there have known my family. I mean, the guy who I use as my lawyer, he used to work on my farm for my grandfather. People know our family, and I don't know if in a small town, I think mostly people like us, but when our cattle would get out and go in the neighbor's lawn, I don't know what he'd say about us, but I think it would be overwhelmingly positive.
I'm really worded the way I can.
Oh.
If they had met you before you were 20.
Yeah.
You're giving us what's happened after that.
That's right.
Which I respect.
Yeah.
But if the people that leave back when you're 10, 15, 20, what would they say?
Wow. I have never gotten that question. They would say she's a tomboy who rode her four-wheeler way too fast through my property. Listen, I don't know what to tell you. I think I was a halfway decent child. My parents might tell you otherwise. You know, I think it would be positive. I don't know what to say. Yes, four-wheeler, and we just got the nieces and nephews their four-wheelers. We now have the 6-year-old driving a little one, but we've come a long way on four-wheelers, I would say. Ma'am.
So I'd like to know about some of your environmental positions, particularly you think that line 5 going under the Great Lakes should be shut down like immediately or ever, and also about renewable energy since you're driving four-wheelers.
Sorry. Fossil fuels.
And being able to take access to people's property by corporations for exporting our frack gas to Canada.
Yeah, so I think two separate things. So on line 5, you know, in order to sneak a few days of vacation, I went and stayed with a teacher of mine, an old friend in the UP, and they're very active in trying to stop line 5 because they live right on the Leishna Islands, right on eastern UP. You know, I think on line 5, if a company is going to have a pipeline that is long past its shelf life, then they should have the responsibility to ensure that it's safe for that area, for the straits, for the people who care about, you know, that water source, which should be all of us, given our dependency on the Great Lakes. So I think at a minimum, the company needs to take responsibility for their actions immediately. I don't know if that means shutting it down immediately, but I know they have to have a mandate to do something about it, and leaving it as is just a recipe for some sort of major disaster in the Straits. On environmental policy and energy policy more generally, I mean, Abdul spoke to this. The future for us in Michigan is to diversify our economy, is to take the things we're exceptionally good at and bring them into the 21st century. So we know how to make cars. Let's be the leader in electric cars. We know how to make we know how to do major manufacturing. Let's be the world leader in wind turbines, in solar power. Let's take our competitive advantage and apply it to the industries of the future. And that's the way to help our economy as a good Midwestern Democrat, but also be the good environmental stewards that we should be when we live on a peninsula. I feel very strongly about this. We were in Lansing talking to a number of environmental activists yesterday, I don't think we will ever get to the point where we will be completely non-dependent on fossil fuels, but there's a lot of work we could do to improve our reliance on them today.
So you know, I'm pretty sure everyone here thinks that healthcare is a huge issue in the United States, especially as Trump's trying to take away our healthcare and that type of thing. So what exactly are your thoughts on universal healthcare?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. So I would say for me, I think healthcare is a shorthand way of saying we want people to have access to care at a rate they can afford, right? That's the shorthand. That's what we're talking about. And for me, I am looking at the ACA, and it's important to work on the issue that's right in front of us, right? The wolf that's closest to the sled. And for me, that is reforming the ACA. There are a lot of things that need to be improved, just like Social Security, when that was brought into being many, many years ago, it didn't take just one piece of legislation. We reformed it. We worked at it. Now, I do believe that we have an astronomical problem with the price of healthcare and prescription drugs, right? It increases at 10 times the rate of inflation every year. And that's just unsustainable. So I do think having a public option that can compete and bring down the cost of that private care would be hugely helpful for people and affordability of healthcare. And on prescription drugs, I obviously believe that there needs to be more regulation on that industry, as I discussed. I definitely support what the Dems are doing in Lansing, and would put forward something like that says, if you're going to gouge us, you need to prove that it's not a predatory price increase. And if you haven't heard, I know most people are familiar with the EpiPen story, the EpiPen lady. If you haven't heard The next iteration of that story, it's insulin for diabetics. If you know anyone who's a diabetic, the price of insulin has just skyrocketed for no conceivable reason other than a predatory price increase. So that's how I'd answer the healthcare question.
Thank you.
What else? That's it? I've exhausted the, sir.
2 questions. One, do you feel that healthcare is right or privileged? And 2, what do you feel would be a way to decrease the opioid epidemic currently? I was talking with Representative Vaupel recently at the Melon Fest, and he commented that legalizing marijuana would not be a way to decrease the opioid epidemic. Do you feel that might be a possibility to decrease it?
Yeah. So, and actually, I think Abdul might be the best position to answer that question, but since we do have, it's sort of intimidating to be talking next to a doctor who is the head of public health for the city of Detroit, but sure. Listen, we have a serious problem with opioid addiction, and we were out in Lansing yesterday talking to the head of the Carefree Clinic. It's like a free clinic for people who don't have access to healthcare on a regular basis. And his description of how the opioid drugs that he was prescribing are cheaper and more easily available than some of the alternatives, that basically forces him into something that could lead to an addiction, was just sort of a heartbreaking story. I think we have a serious problem. I do not know and do not have enough information to understand the link between legalizing marijuana and opioid addiction. I just don't. And I know that there's an effort still underway to get marijuana legalized, but I myself just don't have enough information on the connection. I'm sorry. And on your question on healthcare. So like I said, I think when people say they believe in universal healthcare, it is shorthand for everyone having access to healthcare they can afford, and that is what I believe. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Do you support Kingfish? She refused to answer me. I got it on film. You do.